From courtside the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, episode number 379. Andrew with you once again. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. My co-host and fellow NLSC team member is Derek. You know him in the forum as D43, and he is D4384 on Twitter.
Oh, happy to be here again. And how about that, the top 10 this week?
The top play this week is... I described it as a jaw-dropping dribbling move on the news post, and it really was. Shout out to Number Theory 1984 because that was quite the highlight.
Yeah, Dr. Funk on Twitter. He sent me two good ones actually. He made the top 10 twice, but just love all the submissions that we received for the top 10 plays of the week for the NLSC. And you know what I love about it is think about how many memories we've made playing basketball video games. And this is just a great way to not only see what other people are doing, but to kind of preserve those great memories.
It really is.
Those great highlights because, you know, like you look back on it, and I have so many gaming memories from the 90s from playing like Tecmo Super NBA Basketball and Double Dribble Playoff Edition, you know, like NBA Live 96, Coach K College Basketball, memories from that stuff. But I don't have any highlights for it.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
we didn't have the tech at the time. I mean, maybe if you hooked it up to your VCR, maybe you recorded on a tape. I know a lot of people taped them back in the day. I never did. I had my hooked up through the RF aerial, so I couldn't actually record on VHS. But a lot of people did it that way back in the day. But again, you didn't necessarily do that, or you didn't have the presence of mind. You certainly don't have the time shift tools like you have with action. So yeah, it's what we have these days. We can actually create those memories and not just create them, but obviously preserve them, as you said. And even just the inbuilt recording and screenshot capabilities on consoles is such a welcome addition over the past couple of generations.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I love the wide variety of different games that we're able to put in there. I mean, we even had one of my favorite, submissions is Dunk Dream 95.
That caught me by surprise. I was quite happy to see that. I'm not as familiar with that as you are, but just to see an old game like that and something cool happen, it was. I love seeing those old games crack the top 10.
Yeah, Dunk Dream 95. The guy who posted that, which is at B-Ball Video Games on Twitter, he's also the one that did the Fox Sports Basketball 2000 highlight from the previous week, where Anthony Hardaway got a chase down block and then he posterized somebody on the other end with the Phoenix Suns. So, we're just getting some retro in there. We're getting some NBA 2K21 in there, Live 19, et cetera. It's just really, really neat. And, I hope more people get involved. It seems like more people are getting involved and it's gaining more traction because we want to see your highlights. We've made so many memories over the years and we still continue to. And you and I have been taking a lot of highlights as we play against each other and with each other on different games. But it is really cool to see other people having fun. I really enjoy it.
The enthusiasm for the feature. We used to do it back in the day and it was quite popular. Now, obviously, video content has become even more popular in the meantime. We've talked about that before, how articles, as much as I enjoy doing them, and people seem to respond to them as well, and enjoy them to a certain extent, video content is where it's at. So it's been great to do some more of it, and to have that community involvement and that enthusiasm, as I said, from seeing people, and there's no complaints about the position in the top 10. I'm really glad to see that kind of goodwill in the community, that people are just glad to see each other in the top 10 and to enjoy some really cool highlights from each other, and there's been no complaints about I should be number one or I should be 2 slots higher or something like that. It's people just saying, oh, this is a great countdown and enjoying the highlights. And shout out to the community, not just for giving us those highlights to use, but also just really enjoying the end product.
Yeah, it's a tribute to basketball gaming more than anything. I think people understand that, especially when they see highlights from games like Dunk Dream 95, and highlights from just games even from the 90s, and even from the 80s. Like we had a double dribble highlight in there last week. And I'm pretty strategic with the placement and whatnot. And obviously, like the top few plays need to be pretty awesome. And I think like your free throw line dunk with Jordan last week, and then that ridiculous street ball move this week, I think those are very fitting for a number one play. of the week. So yeah, I also like variety in highlights. I like it not just to be dunks. We have in this week's highlights, we have Kobe Bryant's end of the half left hook buzzer beater. We have that steal and then the full court three in there from Number Theory 1984 from NBA 2K21. It's nice to not just have dunks. We have a good variety,
because it's easy,
and I like that.
It's easy to just record a dunk, a fancy dunk animation, and look, those are nice highlights and everything. But as we said a couple of shows ago, it's all about the context and really having that exciting situation, preceding it by a tremendous dribbling move, an elusive maneuver there, or a great defense to offense situation. It's really about the context that makes it. Although we had one when we were playing, which was it? Was it NBA 2K17 we were playing with classic teams?
No, well that Jerome Kersey dunk I had on you last night using
2K20.
the 9091 Blazers. Yeah, that might make a top 10. That was a huge poster.
Mario Elie from.
Yeah, and then you're Mario Elie. For people that don't know, Andrew put that highlight up on the NLSC YouTube channel, and it's Mario Elie at the buzzer to end the quarter, launching a three-quarter court three and smoking it. Definitely a top 10 play.
Yeah. Look out for it in a future countdown, perhaps. Yeah.
Right, exactly. We did, so we can talk about that real quick. We did jump on the Steam, the 2K servers and played a couple games of NBA 2K20, and last night I was the host, and I used the 9091 Blazers and you used the 9091 Warriors, and I blew you out. And the reason is because I was the host, and the game felt a little bit better for me, and you had more lag. So I'm flying around the court and throwing it down on you, and Drexler was unstoppable, all of this stuff. And I even had to pull back like you did for me on that live game once, and stop driving. So because, for good sportsmanship. And then today we revisited and let you be the host. And I was the 0405 Suns, and you were the 0405 Spurs. And you won by double digits, I believe. And I couldn't stop you because I had the lag. So Duncan just did work on me, and Bruce Bowen was shooting like Steph Curry, and basically Steve Nash was useless. And it's really interesting. First off, it's really disappointing how the 2K servers work sometimes, number one. Number two, it's really telling how much like a second delay, how big of a difference it makes with quality.
It really does, and it's strange because I've had a much smoother experience on console, and I do have a gaming PC. It's a few years old now. You have a gaming PC, which is newer than mine, but it was still a very disappointing performance for the 2K servers. And look, we're going to still try a few things, and I need to do some maintenance on my PC, admittedly, but we actually jumped on Parsec after that, and it seemed smooth. I mean, I had the delay again, similar to what we've had, and we're still been troubleshooting the Parsec delay, and it's tough to get around the delay across the globe as we have it. But no, it seemed a lot more playable, and it's a shame when one of us has such an advantage. And I also pulled it back again in that Spurs-Suns game a little bit, but then you started to get close, so I did have to... my competitive nature kicked in, so I did push a little bit towards the end again. But, man, Nazir Muhammad, what a beast on the boards.
Yeah, I got killed by Nazir Muhammad on the boards, and then you smoking threes with Tim Duncan, and we figured out why.
Oh, yeah.
And I've talked about it so many times with the roster inaccuracies and the rushed copy spreadsheet stuff with the classic teams. And, Tim Duncan's like a B+ on three, and he only took 9 that season. So you're able to go out there and hit threes with Tim Duncan.
75.
Sean Mann.
70, to be specific, 75 3-point rating for a 3 of 9 on the year, which is, like you said, we were talking about it before we started recording the show, and you said spreadsheet. It's just a spreadsheet formula that says, okay, he shot 33% that year, but it's no context. It's 3 of 9. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it just kills it. I mean, you could technically go out there and shoot 10 threes with Duncan per game and hit like 3 or 4. And if you're playing on a lower difficulty level, you could probably hit 5 or 6 out of 10. And it's an immersion killer. And this is why it just frustrates me so much how they handle the classic teams and the all-time teams and whatnot. And then Sean Marion just wouldn't dunk. like throwing alley-oops to him right up at the rim and he's laying it up and missing, or he's right near the rim and instead of going up for a dunk, he does this layup that gets either swatted or goes off the side of the rim or something like that, and it's because of the tendencies. And
I have the numbers here.
Yeah,
I have the numbers here for Marion, if you like. 40 standing dunk tendency and 30 driving dunk tendency. The 2005 Marion. Not the 2015-16. When did he retire? 2015, I believe. His last year with the Cavs.
We're talking about the 05. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about prime Marion in the 7 seconds or less Suns. Yeah, he should have a much higher tendency than that. I don't know how that came about. And also, you're trying to make moves with Amare. 42 speed with ball, 76 speed overall, and 69 acceleration. So he can run.
42 speed with ball does? Do you know what 42 speed ball does? It basically makes your face-up game useless.
Yeah, running in
Amare Stoudemire, over the last 20 years, is one of the best face-up big men that the league had to offer in the last 20 years. And you can't face up with him. His acceleration is so low and his ball handling is so low, he can't make a move. He'll just drop the ball. He's so slow getting up and down the court that he's nothing in transition. Like, he's not a viable option. Amare Stoudemire is not a viable option in transition. Cutting to the hoop, he's a slug.
On the 7 seconds or less Suns, when he was in his peak, running the floor like a gazelle.
Meanwhile, you with Tim Duncan are shooting threes and then also driving from the perimeter and pulling up.
Robert Horry.
Like he's Michael Jordan. Yeah, and then Robert Horry, right, exactly. And then, Bruce Bowen just hitting threes from all over the court. Like, there's just so much inconsistency and inaccuracy that it can kill the experience. Now, you and I, for the most part, we try to use the players to strengths. But there's certain things that you just can't get away from, like the Sean Marion thing. Like, am I supposed to just not feed Sean Marion when he goes to the hoop?
Apparently.
Am I supposed to be afraid of using Sean Marion in a mismatch, like right under the hoop? Should I be afraid of going up with him? I guess so, because that's the way the ratings and tendencies are for him. So, yeah, I don't know. It was a little frustrating. And then, like you said, there was some hope though with Parsec because I changed one of the settings to use client resolution instead of host resolution, and it may have helped. I also updated my graphics card. I don't know if that would help me as a host or whatnot, but we played some 2K20 after using Parsec, and it wasn't feeling bad.
It was more playable,
well.
Yeah. Plus, when we do it that way, we can use custom rosters, so we can, if we do some corrections, if we use either community rosters that are corrected or our own fixes, then we've at least got that option, which as we can do with other games through Parsec. But, yeah, those tendencies, I mean, if we put aside the lag, we could have at least had a more competitive game. I was trying not to drive every time because I could tell you had the lag that I've experienced before, and I was trying to put up those mid-range floaters with Parker. I had a couple of, we were trying to play. This is how we play each other. We try to play quite realistically. I mean, sometimes when you get competitive, you got to take that open dunk once there to try and score and try and win the game. You're not going to say, oh well, I'm going to pass up the open dunk in the name of realism because we've already made 2 dunks, so we can't have too many dunks. Or you do still compete and accept a little bit of breaks from reality.
Yeah, but there's a difference, though. There's a huge difference when you know that the other person is handicapped. There's been games where Live 10 where both of us, you could tell, like you said to me once, the game was playing like butter. Like, that both of us are playing on an even level, really, and then we can just both play. But if you're going up by somebody by 15 or 20 and you can tell that you have a slight advantage on somebody and you don't pull it back and you just run it down their throat and keep scoring on them and taking advantage of all of the lag. Oh, look, this person can't guard me while I drive the lane, so I'm just going to drive on them over and over and over again. I think that's kind of crappy. So
it is, and it's not a sign of greatness or being great on the sticks if you're taking advantage of a technological error.
Right, exactly. I mean, you can get a good highlight every now and then, like your Mario Ellie full court shot. I mean, we can still use that. My Kersey huge poster dunk, we can probably still use that. But as far as like uploading a full game to YouTube and saying, hey, here's a matchup between these two people, was it really a fair matchup?
No.
So I don't even like uploading those games. Right, yeah.
But we have some highlights, which is nice, And again, it's been... There's an element of fun, and this is how it was with playing 2K Pro-Am and the Rec with friends, with the guys over the years, is that even on a rough time, we could at least have a few laughs or commiserate or bitch about the ratings or whatnot together. So there was kind of that shared experience still. But that being said, it's always nice when the game itself is much more fun and playable. But at the very least, we're able to get on there and try a few things out. And some of our sessions have been a flop as far as trying to get things to work with Parsec or Steam Share or just playing by the play with friends options in game. But it's still been fun, and it's great to get on there every week and share these stories. Obviously, when we get on the podcast to record, I actually played NBA Live '95 on Super Nintendo a little bit the other night, and this is why I need to get action, because I forgot to record with Bandicam and John Barry. Playing with Brent Barry, obviously, with the 2005 Spurs, but John Barry going up against the Bucks with the Timberwolves, underdog matchup to say the least, extended the lead to 5 at halftime for the Bucks by hitting a full court shot. And even though that was the opponent, I wish I had it. So yeah, I need to get that program just to have the time shift, because look how it's been able to get all those highlights for us, for you.
Yeah, it's just so easy. I mean, again, I'm not going to go over it in detail, but I mean, right when Andrew and I are done playing, I can show him the highlights of the game we just played, and it's just so convenient, and it's in great quality. It's in perfect quality, like we're playing. Like it's 60 FPS, it's clean video, etc. So I love it. I love capturing those memories. I have so many highlights on my computer, which is why I started my own top 10. But yeah, we need to get that installed on your computer, and possibly Movavi Video Suite. Now, they don't sponsor us, but
they could. We're open to it.
They could. We're open to it.
We'll take that money to. I mean, we believe in the product, so it's not. Is it shilling if you believe in it?
No, absolutely not.
There you go.
I mean, it depends on how bad you are with it. Don't suck up.
Yeah, that's right. You can go a little bit too far with it, but they are definitely good programs. Great programs, in fact. I do need to upgrade. I also know that a PS5 controller will just plug straight into a Windows PC and be picked up. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, the other thing too is, and I mentioned this on another podcast, I still don't think the large majority of console players know what we can do on PC. I mean, I think they think of it still as like not as convenient. I have my desktop. My brother has one in there too, hooked up to his own TV. But I have my desktop PC in my living room, and I use a wireless Xbox One controller, and I can play all of my games with it, every single one of them. And I'm using it like a console, but at the same time, I'm able to take those quick highlights and make my videos and all of that stuff. And you can use, and it's hooked up to my TV too. It's not a monitor. Like I have my PC hooked up to my TV via HDMI, and I run every game at 60 FPS in 1080p or in 4K, and it's great. I don't think a lot of console gamers, the majority of console gamers, I don't think they understand that you can play PC games like that.
I mean, that's the big thing about PC versus consoles, and not acknowledging the advantages of one or the other.
I think that most console users think that PC gaming is still mouse and keyboard.
Yeah.
Right?
Which I don't think some games are.
Or like generic controllers, right? Like, sure. I don't think they understand that you can use an Xbox, like you plugged in your PS5 controller and it works. And I use my Xbox One controller and an Xbox 360 controller if I need to, and those work perfectly. So I don't think people understand the convenience and how easy it is.
I will say, though, there are some PC games that seem to be very anti-gamepad and say, oh, that's a console thing, but I'm sorry, going back to the 90s, there were all kinds of peripherals for the PC. The Gravis gamepad, very infamously promoted in Jazz Jackrabbit for the PC. So peripherals like gamepads and everything they're as PC as console. So if you're a PC gamer and downplaying gamepads, that's ridiculous, because they are the way to play some games. I mean, I play Fallout with a keyboard and mouse and shooters, similar shooters like that as well, and some other games, but. No, if I'm playing a sports game, or most other genres for that matter, a platform or whatever, I'm using a gamepad.
I use Xpadder for those games, just so I can still use my controller. So for the games that don't have gamepad support, or it's like partial gamepad support, I just use Xpadder. And what that does is it just allows me to map the keys and the mouse to my controller, and I just play them that way. And it doesn't take to do that. So.
My Logitech wireless F710 actually has a switch on the top which goes between direct input and X input, so I can actually switch it back and forth for old games for compatibility. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, see, it's stuff like that. Like, I wonder how many people even know about that. But every time you say, like, Logitech or whatever, it brings me back to me playing video games in, like, the late 90s. And using those generic controllers to play games like GameNet Match for the PC, which was like a online tennis game, and trying to play Madden on my PC with it. I think it was like Madden 98 or something like that. But yeah, pretty wild what you can do, and that what people don't know about.
And, we've been playing a lot of Live 10, of course. That's been one of our most consistent games that we've been playing through Parsec, and we've been coming up with different ideas of what to do. I came up with a huge list of possible retro teams we can put together, and I sent it along to you, and because you were saying, oh, can we do this or that? Oh, such and such isn't in the game, Matumbo or Pat Garrity or whatever. And I was saying to you, yeah, actually, I've been through the free agent pool. There was a ridiculous amount of inactive players still active in Live 10 that I was able to put retro teams, at least 5 players, sometimes makeshift lineups with not exactly to the position, but the earliest team that I could put together was the 1998 76ers. That's wild in Live 10. And it makes you think, if only we had actual retro content in Live 10, as you said.
Yeah, it's too bad we couldn't go back a little bit further. The key to that, obviously, and I saw your list, and I think it's great, the key to that is making sure that no key players are missing. Like, if you can for example, if we can get the starting lineup for the 2006 Heat, great. Let's do that. We could play a game 5-6 minute quarters and at least get some sort of experience out of it. Even if guys like Alonzo Mourning or Gary Payton are missing, as long as we have that starting 5. So that's really, like you said, getting at least 5 players and, hopefully all starters. That's kind of the cutoff.
Yeah. I mean, if we want to do that, pretty much 2005 through to the 2012 finals, we can have proper starting lineups. We can actually do the finals matchup plus some other playoff matchups and key matchups from the 2005 season through to a couple of seasons ahead, 2012, to do that. So that's pretty cool.
I also liked your idea because it brings me back to something I did when I was younger. You had an idea of putting like all centers against each other, like both of us doing 2 teams full of centers. Mm-hmm. My brother and I actually did that in the 90s. We did that with NBA Live. I want to say it was 96. And we put together all of basically the worst rated centers in the NBA. And one of them, which is funny, was at the time was Moses Malone.
Of course, by that point,
because it was the end of his career, yeah. But, it was like Chris Dudley and John Koncak and Moses Malone and whatnot. We put all of them on a team, and we played on the same team, and we played against the computer. And I love fun, silly ideas like that because you can't play normally that way. You have to think, like, who's going to be the point guard? Are you going to bring it up with Chris Dudley? Are you going to make John Koncak your shooter? He could shoot. Like, is it going to be Blair Rasmussen because he could also shoot? Like, you're looking at it that way, and what settings are you playing on? Et cetera. Like, there's so many different things that can be factored into it. So yeah, it brought me back to that, and I would be up for that, like an all centers lineup.
And I've put together an upcoming feature, what if situations, classic NBA what ifs, as portrayed by players that are in NBA Live 10. You can see that in Webback Wednesday will be coming out this coming week. Actually, a lot of Live 10 content coming out right now. It really continues to be my retro jam. I really wish I'd spent more time with that game when it was new. So it's been great, as I've said before in previous shows over the past few weeks that we've been playing this and talking about it. It's just been so refreshing to go back and play that and enjoy a game and get some more out of it. And that's the great thing about retro gaming is if you did miss a game the first time around when it was new, you can spend some time with it and get that appreciation. And I have to say, Fantasy Teams has been so helpful in putting together these screenshots because I'm actually able to get these what if scenarios and actually have other players in the background of the screenshots that would have been on the team with them at the time. So it's not just all close-ups with jerseys. So that's nice. I hope people will enjoy that feature as they've been enjoying our gameplay, and we've obviously been enjoying it. But all these things we can do with fantasy teams, again, or point guards, or centers. I'd love to do some of these retro teams. I think we should start with the 2006 finals. I think that'd be a good one.
Yep, that's a great start. Another good concept idea would be like all centers versus all point guards.
Yeah, bigs versus smalls, yeah.
Kind of fun. Yeah, bigs versus smalls and stuff like that. I also think that's really popular YouTube content as well. People seem to gravitate towards that stuff, like the videos of 46-foot Steph Curry, like, or whatever, like through a mod, like people gravitated towards that, or like matchups of, all these different ideas that are outside just regular 5-on-5 games. So I think it would be good YouTube content that people would probably enjoy as well.
For sure, and it's unique. So, it's unique to try these ideas, because everyone, and not to downplay, because the highlights we've been getting are great, and there's a lot of people doing great stuff with mixes and whatnot, but to actually be creative and think outside the box and put these scenarios together, people are like, oh, this is different. I think people really liked our all-time Celtics versus all-time Bulls using plays that were available in Live 10. That seemed to get some traction as well. People seemed to like that, and that was definitely fun for us. And I really like that we're getting some comments on our style of play, some compliments on our style of play, rather, that are saying that this looks pretty real, and this is the way games should be played. That makes me feel really good, and I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, it reminds me of the content that I upload to my YouTube channel, and I've shown you some of those comments that people make of my brothers and I playing. And we get those compliments too, is, you guys play the game the right way, and you're using players to their strengths, and, the way you're driving and kicking is the way the team, that's the way they played in real life and stuff like that. So it's always great to see that people are enjoying the actual odd court gameplay, between two humans. So I saw that compliment on YouTube. I think I've seen 2 of them now. And yeah, I definitely appreciate that, because I think we play the right way. I think we're trying to use, other than you with Joe Alexander, because he shouldn't be doing that. But, and Travis Howell, just other than that. But that's also what creates video game legends too, right? So if you go to somebody and it's working, and you're able to dominate with them, why would you kind of go away from that experience just because it may or may not happen in real life?
I mean, we've seen players go off. Corey Brewer was quite a solid player, but you wouldn't really expect him to go off for 50 points or a Tony Delk. I mean, these are good, solid role players. There's been quite a few role players that have gone off for 50 points over the years.
Andre Miller did, right?
Sure,
Andre Miller went off for 50 points with no threes, right? So no, it definitely does happen. And remember, like, that start to the season after LeBron left Cleveland with J.J. Hickson. J.J. Hickson was just going off at the beginning of the season, and people were joking around saying, like, he was the new LeBron. Like, don't worry, we don't need LeBron. We got J.J. Hickson.
Well, look at Trevor Ariza. The year that Trevor Ariza went to the Rockets, and Artest, then known as Ron Artest, made world peace, went to the Lakers, and Ariza would kind of had that breakout that Harden would later have a couple of years later, and it stuck for Harden. He actually continued to put up numbers throughout his career, but Ariza kind of had a couple of months in the beginning of the 2010 season where it's like, this is he emerging as the new star? And then, oh no, that's why he was the 3rd or 4th option, or 5th option on the Lakers on the championship team.
Yeah, a couple others. I mean, Lynn Sanity was an entire month of video game legend activity. Lynn Sanity, because he never duplicated that again.
You're Flip Sanity, Flip Murray, back in like 2003.
I was just about to say, by the way, you stole that from me. I hate you. Yeah, that's what I was going to bring that up. I was so excited to bring that up, so our listeners would be like, oh, he remembered the Flip Murray thing, and then you just did it.
Yeah,
so thanks a lot.
I'm sorry. I also need to credit somebody. I saw that come up on Twitter earlier today. Somebody said Flip Sanity versus Lynn Sanity, so I thought that's a good way of putting it. So
a lot of people don't remember. A couple other things too that happened. What about Troy Hudson stepping in for Sam Cassell and going off? There was another one, in Minnesota. That was about Bobby Jackson for the Kings, also stepping in and just going off. Like, these are fine players. They're good players, but they go through these stretches of just being amazing. And it's kind of like how it is with video game legends as well. It's that same. So.
I have to mention, I do have a new video game legend, is Thurl Bailey, who was a fine player, obviously, but he was getting towards the end of his career by 1994, which the 16-bit version, the Super Nintendo and Genesis version of Live 95 is, of course, previous season rosters, 94 season, final season rosters, playing that game between the Timberwolves and the Bucks. Thor Bailey was just my hero in the fourth, and I kind of went away from him and tried to go back to Christian Laettner. And NBA Live 95 does not like Christian Laettner. He was just getting blocked left and right, doesn't matter what I tried. So it has something against Laettner as well. Not too many Duke fans, obviously, on the NBA Live development team at the time, but I went away from Thor and I paid for it, and it was once again John Barry making that game-winning 2, and I just completely botched the last play there, and I lost the game. But Thor Bailey, a new video game legend in an old game. This is how it goes when you go back and play a game. You were old. These players can jump out, and it's really cool. Eric Piatkowski became a legend for me in Live 06, and you remember these players, and we remember them from the NBA as well. You and I being such sticklers for the past, and so such enthusiastic NBA fans for so many years as well as gamers. But yeah, when they stand out in our memory with these great performances, it's and again it's kind of like real life, because even if it is just for a game or a few games, or a stretch, a month, or again just once off in their careers, we do see some big performances from players. So it's not totally realistic to see Joe Alexander, Jumpin' Joe dominate quite like that, but stuff like that does happen.
It's true. It just got me thinking about Josh and Dave's possible reaction to Stephen A. Smith saying that Donovan Mitchell is the greatest Utah Jazz player of all time. For some reason, that just popped into my head.
Need to record a new holding court on that one.
Yeah, we should actually have Josh and Dave on this show just to talk about that. I mean, we don't even need to go into that right now. There's no way that Donovan Mitchell is the greatest Utah Jazz player of all time. But if Josh and Dave, if you're listening, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
We all know that's Andy Toulson.
Yeah, it's Andy Toulson. It's actually Mike Brown.
Yep.
If we're being completely honest. By the way, I loved Mike Brown as a player.
He was on the Timberwolves when I played that game in '95. Yeah, starting center.
There you go. So, but no, definitely video game legends are key, and they're great and everything. But I do like you said, to circle back, I do like those compliments on the gameplay, the style, all of that stuff.
So I'm looking forward to more of these sessions, and we're trying to branch out. We do kind of fall back to Live 10 because it works so well.
We do, but you know what? We just had a really good moment there on 2K20, so I do think there's more opportunity. I think with a few tweaks with the settings, I think we might be able to get it to a point where all games are playable. Mm. So I think putting on unused client resolution probably put us in a step in the right direction, because now it's using your resolution, and maybe that helps with your lag. So who knows? We'll see.
Because obviously there is lag going both a split second where I'm getting the signal and then sending a signal back with my input. So there's probably always a little bit of compensation, but we can get it down. We can get it down more, I'm sure, because we've been slowly whittling it away, especially since we've found those settings. As you found those settings, we've been tweaking it. Would be great to actually play 2K17, since we actually love that game, and of course we can take advantage of UCTR.
Yeah, 2K17 is interesting because if there's any lag, that game, I feel like that game is incredibly skill-based most of the time. And because of the way the defense is played, because there's so much, brick wall defense, I think that the lag hurts that game more when you're playing it. That's just the way I look at it. Like, we tried to play on the same team when you had lag on NBA 2K17, and it was not a good experience. I felt like I had to ISO every time with Baron Davis because I didn't have lag.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and you're just bumping off of defenders like a pinball, and
trying to turn the corner.
I'm watching.
Yeah,
you're trying to turn corners, and you can't turn corners, etc. So I'd love to get NBA 2K17 working really well, because it is definitely one of our favorites.
And it's also nice to see that being updated a bit. The project, the Proj Reborn project has come out, of course, by SICK. We do touch on modding, obviously, from time to time, and that is a project that's been pretty regularly updated over the past few weeks with new releases, of full 2021 season update as far as I can see, certainly very detailed. And we talked about it last week, that we're not seeing as many updates for the older games like we used to, but when you get a favorite like a 2K13 or 14, and 17 obviously stands out for a lot of people as well, it's still being updated, and that's great to see.
Yeah, not a lot of and we'll get into this in a second, not a lot of modding activity in the community, which I think is a little bit disappointing. Not a lot of releases to really touch on this week. We do have that Pro-J Reborn project for NBA 2K17, which is updating the game to current rosters. And what's kind of cool about it is they don't just do like the accurate players on each team. They're also doing like menu stuff, like they're changing the title screen. They're changing, I believe, the edit player screen. They're using a custom one for that. They're changing some of the menu stuff, all of that. So I think that that's really cool that they're making it a full experience. They're using some of my conversions that I've done from, the recent NBA 2Ks to, get more accurate players in there, guys like, Carson Edwards, Robert Williams, Ryan Brokoff, Vlatko, Chanchar, etc. So I'm glad that they've been able to use that, and I've been able to contribute to that project a little bit. And I believe that's Sick 2K that's doing that, and then there's other people that are helping out. So it is cool to see that NBA 2K17 is getting updates. We have NBA 2K21, I believe. It's APG 2K, I want to say the name is. And he's done a mod that's Toons versus Goons for Space Jam 2. And while I won't be watching Space Jam 2, I think it's a movie that never should have been remade. You can still appreciate the art.
For sure. Yeah.
These projects, and I'm looking, and I was watching some gameplay video of it, and I'm watching Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck out there, and they look great. And as you know, I recently did Cyberface for the Mask and Hellboy and whatnot, and I just want to say it is not easy making those. It's not easy making characters like that. That Hellboy took me days.
It's a lot of model work on that.
Ton of model work, ton of texture work in order to make, like for Bugs Bunny, the ears look right, his eyes to actually open and close, but also the textures around his eyes to look right, for the texture around his mouth to look right, the arms, the legs, all of that stuff is just really impressive. So keep an eye on that mod. I don't know if it's received a public release yet. I know that I've seen gameplay video, but that's in the NBA 2K21 section as well. So, but yeah, like I said, not a lot. I mean, there's the 2K19 roster project that's being done. I believe Thundershack is still doing some things on NBA 2K20, but there's not a lot going on right now in the modding community. And, we talked about it before the call. It's just a little bit disappointing, and I think it's because a lot of modders have moved to private releases, Patreon, and Discord.
Absolutely, yeah. Unfortunate.
It's just kind of blah for the NLSC.
And sometimes I look at, because I used to do a lot of work with sliders way back in the day. I obviously had the NLSC rosters for years as well, so it was kind of like the home of a particular, quite popular, I feel, roster back in the day. And of course, the original rosters by Lutz and Tim were very popular as well, and I was honored to take over the branding from them. So I've moved away from them, a lot of modding content to do the articles, the video, the podcast, etc. So that we haven't really had that NLSC branded release a lot. So I understand that we're kind of not seen as perhaps the home of like a big mod that we used to be. I do see that.
Yeah, hopefully, so, you put out the wish list thread for NBA 2K22. Hopefully people can identify the NLSC with more than just modding, and hopefully they start talking about these games. And hopefully we start seeing more highlights. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring the top 10 back, and that's why I also mentioned it to you, is why, I was getting started on doing that again and making those videos and asking for highlights, is because it's got to be more about the modding, right? Without the game, we got to enjoy these games.
Well,
I mean, it's okay
to enjoy. And John Jousting has brought it up before, and I totally agree that it feels sometimes that people would rather mod a bad but moddable game than actually play a good one. And I mean, modding is important. It's a big part of what we do, always has been. But whenever we've had a game that isn't that good, it's kind of been, well, we mod it to the best of our ability. We try and fix it to the best of our ability with custom rosters or any other hacks or whatever that we can get. But I mean, at the end of the day, you don't just mod a game to scroll through the rosters and say, oh, look, a 1991 season roster. But if the game is unplayable, that's a lot of effort to put into a game that you don't really want to play the custom rosters with, because it's not a fun game. So you really got to focus on modding a game that people want to play.
Well, that's why people keep asking me, and whenever I post an update to the 2K17 roster, I get a ton of those comments on YouTube and whatnot and other platforms is, are you going to bring the UCTR to NBA 2K20? Or are you going to bring the UCTR to 2K21? I got a lot of those questions for NBA 2K18 when it first came out. And it's really hard. I don't know how people do it. It's really hard for me to get motivated to put hundreds of hours of work into mods for a video game because roster mods, they take hundreds of hours.
Absolutely,
if they're done right.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to do that if I don't really enjoy the game or I don't believe in the direction of the game. Well, it's very, very hard to get motivated.
It is, and that's why I've never really taken requests. Some people will say, can you make a college roster or a slam dunk anime roster? And I say, look, I have nothing against the college game. I have no... I have less interest in the college game than I do the NBA. Also, obviously, with the slam dunk anime, I'm not familiar with it at all. Not judging people who watch it, not judging the anime itself. I'm just not familiar with it. So it's I have to decline because it's a lot of work to put into a project that I don't have the knowledge of. So I can't do a good job of it for a start. I can't do it justice. And second of all, I can't be passionate about it. And that's one of the reasons it's taken me so long to do these current rosters for 2K11 while I keep stalling on them. I really need to do something retro, something that I really can feel passionate about. And you pointed this out to me, I believe, on the show last week and also off-air as well, is that's what I need to do next once I finally get these done. And they're coming together, but once I get them done, is focus on a retro roster or a classic teams roster or something that I can really be passionate about because of my nostalgia and whatnot. So that'd have to be the next project, I think.
Yeah, it shocked me when you told me you were doing an updated roster for NBA 2K11, doing like a newer roster, representing like 2021 or whatnot. Like I get it, like I get why
it fills a niche. Yeah,
it fills a niche because you're updating an old game to new. But knowing you and knowing how you feel about this current product and knowing how you feel about basketball's, we can call them glory days or whatnot, the ones that you grew up watching.
Golden era.
And, yeah, the golden era. It's shocking to me that that's what you approached, especially because finding assets is still really tough.
Well, the funny thing is I started it in 2016, or 2017, and it just kind of... There was a lot of setbacks here and there, so it's ended up just kind of being moved forward with each failure to launch, basically. So it made more sense back then, but it's just something I want to get done. I'd love to get some kind of UBR, URB project done, or certainly some classic teams or something for 2K11, and because that's 10 years old now, obviously, and it is hard to get those assets, as you said, although there are some assets that we can use out there, and we talked about public domain and you reusing assets and just making sure there's credit. Even if people have moved on, we can at least do the credit and then deal with the situation as it arises. But I would love to do that because 2K11 is a classic. There's a lot of nostalgia for it. There still seems to be a bit of a demand. Not as big, obviously, for 2K13, 14, and some of the other more recent releases, but it is one that seems to stand out, 2K11. So, and we're kind of getting to that stage where it's almost like the Live 95 of its day, although it's far beyond NBA Live 95, obviously, but it's getting to the stage where this is a classic that people can revisit and will happily revisit, and if we can give them some new content for it, I'll give it a shot.
Something that's never been done for 2K11 that you could consider is a UBR, URB type roster, with basically just full of classic teams. That's something you could consider after you're done this project because I think a lot of people would play it. So I know that Juicy Shack Meat, which is just one hell of a name on the NLSC, and his avatar on there was even more concerning. But nevertheless, he was adding classic teams, if you remember correctly. I know that he put in like the 0304 Timberwolves,
that's right, yeah.
0405 Spurs, I want to say, stuff like that. But he was using, the whole download a team thing, and it wasn't a full roster. Like, there wasn't enough teams for you to say, hey, let's jump into a season with this.
But that's how it comes together. And then the assets are out there, as I said, for possible use. And he's offered up those resources to me before, so I should take him up on that generosity and generous offer and do that when the time comes to make some of those projects. And it's a shame that we didn't have the full Redditor 2 by the time that 2K11 was kind of out of vogue and 2K12 came along. I mean, obviously, That's when UBR came along, but we'd kind of... But by the time we had a really good editor, 2K11, classic as it may be, and beloved as it may be, too many people had moved on to really do a project for that at the time.
Which is too bad.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's definitely too bad. And, I just wanted to make a quick shout out too for the last thing modding wise before we move on. These tools that Luya makes, I think it's Luya, Looyh. I don't think people understand how lost we would be with without some of these. Same thing with Limnono, but also the fact that they're doing things that I never thought would be possible modding a video game, as in, like, and I know that you could do some stuff with DB Commander back in the day, and there was more simple code and all of that stuff, but especially like with the newer games, like NBA 2K19, my brother and I are about 10 or 11 games into a 89-90 season using those great 2K19 still to retro rosters, and we can completely alter the schedule. Like, we made it so there are, the Pelicans and these teams that weren't around at the time, we made it so we don't have to play them during the season. And we were able to completely alter the schedule, and we're able to play it like a real 82-game season with only the teams that were available at the time. And once that 86-87 roster comes out, we're going to be able to do that where, without the expansion teams, we're going to be able to knock the teams down to the appropriate number and just play a season with the appropriate teams. That would not be possible without Luya's NBA 2K tools.
Absolutely.
That was made. And
it's important because it's, that's authenticity that we didn't expect, because usually with a retro season roster, you're like, oh, well, there's something you got to do. I actually just posted my Friday 5 about decisions that you have to make about when you make a retro roster. What are you going to do with the extra teams? Do you just put the dummy players? Do you tell people I'll just simulate those games for a free win? In a dynasty mode, in a franchise mode. So to actually be able to edit them.
Yeah, it's a kill. Simming those games and just getting free wins and stuff just destroys the integrity of the season.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, but I wanted to give a shout out to those tool creators, people like Luya, Limnono, etc.
I've been watching a lot of ROM hacks recently, and people playing various ROM hacks of Mario Brothers and whatnot, and really, really crazy things like a ROM hack of Sonic the Hedgehog. If EA made Sonic, where you have to watch the demo a bunch of times to get a bunch of EA coins to actually start the game, and then if you run out of coins, you can't jump and things like that. So it's really kind of weird that they've done, and it makes me wish that we could do a few more things like that with 2K. Like imagine being able to mod the Jordan Challenge or NBA's Greatest to update that to another player. Like imagine being able to do like the Kobe Challenge, mod that into 2K11, or to do an updated NBA's Greatest graphics and everything like that, and even change the goals, change the statistical goals and things like that. That'd be if we can ever figure out how to do that, that'd be amazing.
We could do our own little spin-offs of modes like that.
Exactly.
Using mods. But not getting like all the interface in there. Yeah, we could definitely do stuff like that. In fact, that's a good project that you could try to take on.
But I mean, if we could actually find a way to change that, or to mod the code to actually change it to, change the menus and even change the statistical goals to reach. I mean, I think that's a pipe dream, but imagine if we could. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. I mean, we do a lot of great stuff in the modding community, but a lot of it is reskinning the game, and that does create new experiences. But imagine if we could really get into the game and like change that mode, or with LeBron Path to Greatness in 2K14 to be able to reskin that mode into a Jordan Path to Greatness, or
more fitting.
Yeah, or something like that. We could change that.
You shared a post that I didn't even know this was a thing, and then I checked out the YouTube video of NBA 2K Street, like NBA 2K20, but turned into NBA Street. And I'm looking at this, and I thought it was fake at first, but it's a mod that makes it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like a mod that creates basically edited animations where players are jumping like way over the rim and dunking.
I did, yeah. They found that, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, that is insane.
You know how they've done that? They've taken the trampoline dunks from the cages in my career and put that in regular gameplay. So it kind of they're jumping off invisible trampolines, basically.
It looks great.
But see, that's the kind of thing, if we can take those mechanics and do that,
I'd play that. Like, if I had that mod and installed, I'd play that against you, and we could have a video on it. That would be really cool. I think those are like private mods, though. And
yeah, that which again is a real shame that we're seeing more of that. But those mechanics are there to be taken advantage of. So I think if we could, those are the mods I'd like to see. I mean, current rosters, fixed rosters are great. Retro season rosters, absolutely. I don't mean to disparage any of the projects that we do see in the community, and I've obviously been a part of those projects for previous games over the years, many of those projects, in fact, but I'd love to see more of those, not just reskin games or fixed rosters or things that are retro season rosters. I do want to see those, obviously, but if we could also see some more weird concept rosters like that take something in the game and really just really mix it up and create this really new experience, like an NBA Street using the cages, trampoline mechanics and things like that. That's very creative. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I'm looking at these ROM hacks, what we could possibly do. And again, I don't know if there's any way we could do that with NBA's Greatest and the Jordan Challenge, but if there was, I mean, if you customize the roster too much and load a custom roster and try and play the Jordan Challenge, it will say this roster was not compatible with the Jordan Challenge. Please load the default roster, or it'll load a roster that's more compatible. But if there was a way we could change it, we could do some really cool stuff for some old games and new games too.
I'd love for a ROM hack for like NBA 2K7 and 2K8 because I'd love to mod those. I'd love to put some classic teams in 2K7 and 2K8.
Live 10?
Like a hack.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah, or like Live 10. Yeah, I mean, how cool would that? You and I would jump on that. That would be a project, like, especially the way we think of the game right now. If there was a ROM hack that allowed a 2-player season mode, somehow they'd hack it. So that was possible, I would die for that. But if they ever found out a way to mod NBA Live 10 and add new assets, make cyber faces, jerseys, teams, and add new teams and everything, that would be a project that you and I could do together that I think would be really fun.
There is that update to, is it College Hoops or NCAA Basketball 10 that they've updated? It's been posted in the forum.
Yeah, I saw that. That was for NCAA Basketball 10.
Right.
And you were able to do a bunch of stuff. But it's still unclear to me how that works because I do have the CD version of 2K7 and 2K8 and whatnot and Live 10, as I've shown gameplay of before we even got the emulator installed and we're doing this. But for some reason, it doesn't, like his description, and I can't remember I think, was it Manny?
It is
Manny,
yeah.
Yeah,
Live.
I think I talked to him. He said something about, you put the disc in and your computer recognizes it. And you should be able to see the files or something like that. And I did that, and my computer does not recognize the discs.
Yeah, I know with 360, you actually have to change the firmware of a CD drive. If you just have a normal, or DVD drive rather, or Blu-ray, you actually have to code it to an Xbox 360, for 360, probably not PS3, so I'm not sure about that. But if you put a 360 disc in a PC, you will not see any files unless you've coded it properly.
Yeah, so I guess I'll say this for anybody listening that's from the modding community. If you want to dig and see if you can get NBA Live 10 for the PS3 emulator, RPC S3 emulator, if you can figure it out and figure out how to mod that, please let us know ASAP because we would be all over it. We would be adding new classic teams. I would be making cyber faces. Christ, I'd be looking at trying to make courts for it, all of that stuff.
Absolutely. It would just be, and it'd be really cool to show that off and to share that knowledge with others. And that's, as we said last week, that's the big thing, too, sharing the knowledge.
Yeah, it's too important. We need more tutorials out there. Unfortunately, we're not getting any tutorials really anymore either because the modding community and then the NLSC hasn't been as active. So.
But as a final point, obviously, as we try to play these games with Live 10, I'll put out a list of the teams that we can create, actually, or put together using the Fantasy Teams option. And again, what a great mode in Fantasy Teams. I keep saying option. It's a mode. Fantasy Teams mode in Live 10. As we said before, let us know what kind of matchups you'd like to see. We'll try and get some other games working as well. There are some games we've tried that we didn't really like playing. With all due respect to Nate, 2001 just didn't really scratch the itch for us. In 2002, although we could at least try 2002 again, maybe without the lag, might work a little bit better. But we'll take some suggestions under advisement and see if we can put out some great videos for you. And obviously we're doing that anyway. But yeah, we said it before, Derek. We're open to some suggestions here for games to play.
I used to do community requests all the time for my YouTube channel, and they were big hits. It gets people to tune in, it gets people to interact and whatnot, and they were actually kind of fun to do. So yeah, any requests for any games actually because we like to look back. Like any request, if you say, hey, can you guys throw on this game and play it and upload a video, because we'd love to see it. We haven't seen this game in a while and we'd love to see you guys play it. Like, let us know and we'll play it. I think that would be a lot of fun. And as you said, Live 2001 and 2002 were disappointing. I think part of it had to do with the lag, but I also think that part of it had to do with NBA Live 2002 having the worst broadcast camera of all time. It is close. You can't zoom out with it really at all. It's just right in on the action. And there's no like isometric cam for the game. No really good camera views for Live 2002. And it's a very weird design flaw.
No interior defense either.
Yeah, and no interior defense either, right. And defense doesn't matter, it seems, in NBA Live 2002. Just shoot. If a guy has a high rating on a shot, it feels like defense in front of him doesn't matter. But, yeah, NBA Live 2002 and 2001 were a little bit disappointing. Live 98 and Live 2000 were better from a gameplay perspective in a lot of different ways.
Totally
Live
agree.
99.
Yeah. So, once again, throw out those suggestions. We love the community interaction. We love the way the community is really getting behind the NLSC Top 10 Plays of the Week that's made the comeback that, of course, Derek is curating each and every week. And speaking of community engagement, Derek, it's time for the mailbag.
Super exciting. I have a question for you in this mailbag. We're going to take one question from the audience, and then I'll have a question for you to end the show.
Sounds good. So this week's question, once again, comes from the B-Ball Pundit, at B-Ball Pundit on Twitter, although Deshaun did actually send it through on Instagram. Any way you can get in touch with us, that's fine. Podcast at nba-live.com and all of our socials, which we will be reading off at the end of the show. But shout out to B-Ball Pundit once again. And he says that, I'm not sure if developers have been selected for the returning NFL 2K, but if Visual Concept has a play in developing it, are we prepared and ready for the NBA side of things to dip in quality even more? Yeah, obviously they are looking to bring back NFL 2K, although it's not going to be as we know it. As I understand it, EA's exclusive deal still means they have exclusive rights to a sim game, so whatever it's going to be is going to be slightly different, but they are coming back with NFL, much the same way that EA is coming back with college football next year or the year after, I believe. So, yeah, is it a concern that it's going to take any production away from NBA 2K?
I mean, I think 2K is unbelievably rich. I think the suits are incredibly rich. I think that even though they continue to ramp up all the microtransaction BS in their games each and every year, they're not hurting from a financial standpoint. So in my opinion, it's possible that it doesn't affect the NBA 2K series at all for the fact that they have enough money to have a completely separate studio and still continue with the same team that they have on the NBA 2K side. And the direction is not going to change on the NBA 2K side as well. So if I'm going to be completely honest, I don't think that it's going to negatively impact the NBA 2K series for the reasons that I just mentioned. But I see why you could be concerned.
I mean, they've just acquired a new studio was it Austin that they acquired?
Yeah, I mean, people think about it, over 10 million players every single year. And those 10 million players are not often not all of them are just buying the base game, right?
Oh, no.
They're not
pumping
just
money into it, yeah.
Or the up to $100 bundles. They're pumping money into it. That doesn't, there's, what about sponsors and all of that stuff? People paying 2K in order to have themselves featured in the game, right? Like stuff like that, because that's going to get them exposure. Like there's so much money.
2K League.
That makes. Yeah, and by the way, it's not just their NBA title either. Just the company itself is doing so incredibly well.
I mean, Take-Two makes GTA is under the Take-Two umbrella as well. That prints money.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to impact them. I will say this, though. I am a little bit more optimistic for the next version of NBA 2K because of another year in development on this new console. I know that's weird coming from me, but I do think it is possible that we see some decent improvements for the next version of NBA 2K. And I got to get my wish list out there.
I do too. But you know, I mean, the last year has obviously been interrupted a lot of video game development as the world has been interrupted by the pandemic. So, I mean, I can understand that there's probably been some very unusual conditions over the past 12, 18 months, whatever. So I imagine they will hire a new team, or they'll outsource it to another studio. They'll acquire a studio. Obviously, like you say, 2K, Take-Two is not hurting for money. They will pump money into the NFL 2K franchise. And I mean, maybe some people who are on the NBA side of things, if they want to change, they might go to 2K. But I think they'll just fill those slots, obviously, and bring more people in and whatnot. And again, they acquired that other studio to help out with art assets and whatnot for NBA 2K already, and that's now officially under the 2K umbrella as well. So I don't think it will affect it, but as always, my concern is the trends in the gaming industry as far as, again, recurrent revenue mechanics. I know it's beating a dead horse, but it continues to be an issue throughout the industry. 2K, GTA, any game that can bilk more money out of its gamers, out of its user base, it will do that. You know, we've seen that AAA or mobile. It's just the way it goes, unfortunately. With that, and also again appealing to that wide user base that's not necessarily hardcore basketball fans, or they're newer fans that kind of don't care about things like accuracy in the historical teams and other things that we've talked about as well, and more just the focus of the development of 2K already. I think they'll always have the manpower and the assets and whatnot. It really comes down to direction and focus.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully the suits give them more of an appropriate direction, and those classic teams and all-time teams get the right attention, and then they pay attention to those gameplay aspects that we talked about, where there's, like you said, there's so many legacy issues because they use the same blueprint. There's so many legacy issues that are still in the 2K21 next-gen version that just drive people nuts. And, you know, shout out to Teddy Bear the Gamer at 317 Teddy Bear for sending me highlights for the top 10 from NBA 2K21 because he's been playing it a lot. But you see it in his highlights, and it's so frustrating. He's just running by the computer on the perimeter. Like he's just running by the computer and then just getting, you know, easy looks at the hoop. And there's just no resistance, and the defense is completely unrealistically wrong-footed. The rotations aren't there, all of that stuff. The defensive AI just needs a complete overhaul in NBA 2K video games. And as far as the offensive AI, they could do a better job in that as well, as far as people filling lanes, etc. But yeah, I mean, I see it in those highlights, and it's super frustrating, and they really got to fix that. They got to fix how easy it is to just run by people.
They do. And you know, I have been playing 2K21 pretty consistently all year, from a combination of PC, PS4, and PS5, actually. Quite a bit of my team this year, and it's been fun to sink my teeth back into that and move away from my career and the connected experiences. It's been refreshing to do that, but of course there has been that frustration with the legacy issues on PS5, which has become my platform of choice because it is the most up-to-date version. Doing my team on two platforms is it's rough to do. I kind of did it a little bit with PC and PS5, and of course the PS4 progress, it goes back and forth between PS5 and PS4 when you're on that when you're connected like that, which is awesome that they did that this year, and hopefully they do that as long as they continue to support both generations. But I have found myself, Derek, winding down my 2K21 gaming. I haven't played it as much over the past week, and even when we've been playing like Live 10 or whatever, you and I, for my single-player gaming, I have been going back and playing my team on PS5, 2K21, and I've been doing less of that. And yes, the season is obviously coming to a close, or it's in the playoffs, and we're getting closer and closer to the end of the 2021 season, but they're still pushing through content for it, and I have been playing it here and there, but over the past week or so, I really have scaled back my 2K21 in favor of playing some Live 10 or Live 95 and some other games that aren't basketball related over the past week or so. And you know, I've got a fair amount of I've played over 200 or 300 hours, I would say, or across all the consoles easily. So it's not like I haven't enjoyed or got my money's worth. And I think it's at that point where I'm like, you know what, I've had some fun with this, a fair bit of fun, also frustration, but enough fun with it. I'm going to put it aside because it's not. I haven't been so hooked that I can't put it down, but at the same time, I'm kind of satisfied, if that makes sense, with what I've done so far.
Yeah, my brothers and I have just stuck with, outside of my brother Nick and I doing a Legends season where we're about 40 games in now, which is a pretty significant amount of time to play the game because we're playing 12-minute quarters.
Sure.
So we played 40 games of our Legends season, so we're about halfway through. We put, like I've said before, it's Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Bill Russell, and Wilt Chamberlain as a starting lineup, and then on the bench we have Kobe Bryant, Clyde Drexler, Julius Erving, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Charles Barkley. And we're, just playing against the regular teams in the NBA on the same team, and we're having a blast. So it's a little bit too easy to score in that game in general, and there's just a lot of blah moments, so it's not as fun as when we do play Legends seasons on other games. But, we've gotten basically our money's worth out of NBA 2K21, for better or for worse. But we've really basically just stuck with NBA 2K19. My brother Nick and I are playing our 89-90 season, which I stated earlier, and we're on season 2 on NBA 2K17, where all three of us, me and my two brothers, are playing on the same team. And it's the first time we've ever moved on to a second season on a video game.
Which is
and
cool.
We're 8 games in second season, so it's kind of cool. So, we've stuck mostly with 2K17 and 2K19 recently.
Before we move on to your question, for me, just want to mention a story that Kid Cash 202 on Twitter, of course, sent along to me based on a previous episode, mentioned that he coaches middle school basketball and is talking to his kids about that he coaches about 2K, and recalls a conversation from circa 2017 between him and the kids he was coaching about the modes they enjoyed. And when he said My League, they thought it was funny and said, kind of like brought out the whole old head thing, and that it was ridiculous that he played it and laughable, and says that he came back and had to say that they like playing the Barbie dress-up mode, which is kind of how it goes with the city and the neighborhood and everything, and how they don't like basketball for real. Thank you for sharing that story, and that does highlight some of the generational divide that we now see in the basketball gaming community. The older veteran basketball gamers like us that will have an appreciation for those old school modes and the offline experience, or couch co-op and head-to-head, and just as we've been playing. But yeah, we do see that is that generational divide, and the players, the gamers that like dressing up and having the park fit and everything, and playing those modes, which, look, enjoy it, play what you want. That it's not about, the kids are wrong and we're right, but it is funny that there is that sneering at the, and obviously Kid Cash coming back, they came at him first, so he kind of said, okay, kids, you're playing the Barbie modes, which I love that, especially after that Ronnie 2K comment a few years back. We are more than a Barbie dress-up game. A day before the blog about shoes dropped. Real great timing there, Ronnie. But I do like that little quip to come back to the any kind of old head bashing. I do like the little quip to come back to that. But again, it does highlight the divide in opinions and the divide in preferences. That it's. A lot of people are interested in more than basketball when it comes to basketball games, ironically, and it shows.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that these kids are scoffing at people for wanting to use NBA teams in an NBA video game. It's NBA 2K21. NBA is in the title. Like, to say that somebody's an old head, or to knock somebody for trying to use NBA teams and even trying to play, sim with NBA teams or anything like that, that's telling. That's laughable, to be completely honest with you, because that's the reason those modes are there, right?
Sure.
I can't get into the whole Barbie dress-up stuff. I can't get into, it's not about skateboards. It's not about what backpack you're going to wear or what color your backpack is. It's not about, like, I can't stand watching those videos, and maybe that's kind of, whatever. It's in the game. But watching the videos where these kids are playing 5-on-5 and like three or four of the guys on the court have like backpacks on.
Mm-hmm. And
it's just all this weird. It just doesn't even look like basketball to me. Like, who plays basketball in a backpack? So like, it's not, they can play it and they can try to have fun with it and everything. But like you said, what it seems like now is just, it's a lot of people that don't really love basketball, and a lot of people who don't really play basketball either. They're just, and that's why the gameplay looks so hectic sometimes and feels so hectic, is because these kids don't really know or play basketball. They're on there because NBA 2K is cool and it's a good time-wasting thing for them, and they like the style of it and the fit, and it's not about the hoops on the court, right? So, it's unbelievable that anybody could knock somebody for wanting to play real basketball or, fundamental basketball, or use the NBA players and add some, play authentic basketball. How anybody would knock somebody for that in an NBA basketball video game. So
it is very ironic.
NBA is in the title.
We said that a couple of episodes ago. Yeah. It's an NBA game, right? It's right there in the title. So you would think, but I just think it's very bold to say that to your coach. I mean, I guess there's some kids running some sprints and suicides after that one. It's calling out your coach like that.
That's a kid, Andrew, that's going to bury 25 of 32 threes against you and pop from half court.
Yeah, so that's very true.
Just remember that.
Yeah, so they'll get us back on the virtual hardwood and blacktop, that's for sure. But thank you to the B-Ball Pundit and Kid Cash for sending in those comments and questions. I don't think that it's going to have too much of an effect on NFL 2K. It's probably going to be seeing maybe some crossover content as well with it. We've seen some of that crossover content with NBA Live in recent years. It wouldn't surprise me if we see the same in 2K, but I do think they'll they'll either use one of the studios they've acquired or outsource, or they'll certainly bring people on to do that. But I think that the bigger problem with 2K is the NBA 2K, that is simply, as it has been for the past few years, even without, or especially without NBA Live to really counter it and to either not coming out or not really make a dent in sales, is the feeling they can do whatever they want and having that focus being misplaced.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we truly need a competitor in the space. And I have my fingers crossed that if NBA Live doesn't come back, that somebody else comes into this space. They don't have an exclusive NBA license. There's no reason why another company in 2021 can't come into this space. It's mind-boggling to me that in the early, and this is actually going to go with my question for you, but it is mind-boggling to me that 20 years ago we can have like 5 or 6 different basketball games, sim basketball games in the space being released, and then suddenly in 2021 we only have one. Is that part of evolution, to have less options?
It's not a golden era, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, so exactly. It's the opposite of that. So I don't think this NFL 2K thing is going to impact NBA 2K at all. That's just my answer to the question. So
maybe we'll see a Dunk Dreams 22.
Hey, that gameplay looked pretty good.
Holds up.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing I wanted to say about that for those people still who were hanging on at the beginning of the show. I told you this. So when they say incredible dunk on that highlight in the top 10, and they say incredible dunk, that's the exact same voice, I swear, from Double Dribble Playoff Edition, and I really need to figure this out. I need to see if the voice for Double Dribble Playoff Edition is the same for Dunk Dream 95.
Like a stock asset or something, yeah.
Well, not a stock asset, like the same person. Like, did they have the same, Tim Kitzrow comment, right? It's like if Tim Kitzrow was commentating on a different video game and you were like, hey, wait a minute, that sounds like Tim Kitzrow.
That's what he did, Mutant League Football back in the day. Yeah.
Right. There you go. You'd have that aha moment. So I had that moment with Dunk Dream 95 where I was listening to that, and that incredible dunk, it's in my brain. You have any idea how much we played Double Dribble Playoff Edition? It's the exact same voice. So I got to find out if that's, what that is, like who says that and all the tying in and all of that stuff. So we'll see.
Stay tuned for the answer, or indeed tweet it to us at Deeper384.
Yeah. Absolutely. If you can figure it out, and maybe I'll reach out to @bball video games who submitted the highlight. Maybe he knows, but I might put those side by side in a video to show you what I'm talking about.
We may have found someone who is as enthusiastic a collector of basketball games as us.
Yeah, because he keeps submitting highlights from these classic games, and he told me in our chat, he said that he really enjoys playing retro basketball video games. So
right on. Right on. We certainly respect that here on the NLSC podcast, you and I. But with that being said, you say you have a question for me?
So this might get a little bit deep because it's not just about basketball video games, but it's also about your place in life at the time, like your mindset, what you were doing in life. If you could go back to 1 year and be the age that you were, playing basketball titles that were available at that time, what year do you go back to and why?
I think it's 2005. 2005 because, of course, we had NBA Live 06 on PC, which is one of my all-time favorite games. Love modding that game. Love playing that game. It's also the beginning of my 20s, basically. We're the same age, of course, born in 1984. So that was the year I turned 21. There were some things some decisions I made in my 20s later on for self-improvement and whatnot that I would actually make earlier on. So if I could go back, I would both enjoy. I'd make those changes a little bit earlier, knowing, with the wisdom of age, make those decisions earlier and stop doing some of these self-destructive things that I was doing at the time, and seek that self-improvement and also be able to handle some of the things that were happening in the community better at the time as well. I love look back at those situations and think, if I could only have handled that with more maturity and more poise and whatnot. So I'd love to do that. And 2005 was just round about the real peak of our NBA Live modding community as well. The stuff we were doing is great, and I'd love to be able to mod that. Well, of course, I can mod Live 06 today. It's just a smaller audience to do it, but I think 2005, and again, it was that time, the 360 was coming out, and Live 06 obviously had the problems, but it was just a very exciting time, I think, in the community, and of course, then within a year later, I was being flown over for my first community event, so a lot of stuff from kind of my early 20s that I'd love to perhaps have a bit of a do-over on, not to get too much into them on this podcast, but I would love to, if I was to have my time over, I would change a few things there, but as far as basketball gaming is concerned, it was also a great time, and maybe I'd get more into 2K as well, and knowing what I do now, and being able to have the patience to try another game that I haven't. Back then, it was very hard for me to get into because it was so different to live as far as some of the mechanics and the control scheme and whatnot. Being more open to playing the competitor and not still having those trappings of being an NBA Live fanboy, to be completely honest, at the time, I'd be able to put that aside now. That's the great thing about going back with that wisdom. Unfortunately, we can't, but we can just better ourselves moving forward. Not to get too philosophical about it, but I think 2005 would be mine.
Now I'll pull my robotic Kevin Harlan response here. Great answer, like they do it in the new NBA 2Ks when his audio is just like other commentators are brought in and they have their lines and they do this whole like long story like Chris Webber or Doris Burke or something, and then Kevin Harlan gives the robotic. Great answer.
Well said.
Well said. Oh yeah, or well said. Well said or great answer.
I agree.
I do think that's a great answer though. And it makes sense. I was wondering if you would go back to Live 98, but then I was thinking about life, and I was like, who really wants to go back to when they were 13 or 14 years old? That's a weird time.
Yeah, high school, I can leave that behind. Early 20s, sure, high school. I mean, there were things I would change back in high school if I had the wisdom of a 36-year-old as a 14-year-old, but that's just not realistic. So, yeah, I'll leave that. I'll leave those memories alone.
It is interesting, too, because 2005, 2006, like you said, was the height of like you with the live community and, a lot of great things that were going on with modding, and then it just went all and crapped the bed a couple of years later.
And I liked the NBA at the time too. I was getting back into it. The Bulls were on the rise again, so I was getting really excited about it after a few years of sort of trying to find my way as a fan. Michael Jordan coming back with the Wizards, which I had mixed feelings about. Then, of course, he retired, and then it's finding a new favorite player, new favorite active player, kind of latching onto Ben Gordon, and then, of course, later Derrick Rose some years later. But that was a great time in the NBA still, I feel. I mean, people may look back on it now and look at it as a dark age. I don't think so.
It's not. I love the NBA, and I can go through all the great teams that were playing at that time and how fun it was to watch them.
So, look, I'd love to do that. It's I'm going to say 2005, 2006 would be the era that I go back to. It's a time, obviously there's some things I would change personally and also in the way that I handled some things with the NLSC at the time as well, but you can but grow from these experiences. Obviously I don't dwell on that stuff except to look at how far I've come in some respects, but as far as gaming, that was a great time for the community. Not always for me personally, and sometimes there was friction, but again, I feel that if I could put myself back in my position then, I would have a better perspective. There is some wisdom, I would like to think, that comes with age, and certainly some perspective. So, yeah, that would be mine. But how about you?
Yeah, well, first off, I'd like to say that I'd love to hear from the community on this.
Yeah, what's your golden age?
What's your golden age? If you could go back to 1 year, what would it be and why? I think it's a really interesting thing to revisit.
So just to interrupt, I would say 2009, but with all the Live 10 we've been playing, I feel like I've gone back to 2009 already. So it's
recently it's kind of felt like we were back in 2009.
Yeah.
No, I'll say same thing here. Like my early 20s, I definitely have a lot of regrets, a lot. And I wish I could go back and change things. But as far as like basketball gaming goes, and as far as the community and the way the NBA was at the time, I agree with you. I totally agree. For me to go back, wow. So I was only prepared to ask you the question, not answer it myself.
Throw it back, yeah.
Lesson learned.
Well said.
We had a lot of fun with NBA 2K11 and 12. I have a big regret of not being around as much because I was so occupied with, I don't know, work and girls and stuff like that, if we're being completely honest. And I was trying to, live it up the best I could. And I feel like what ended up happening, though, is I ended up neglecting my brothers a little bit. And I would love to go back and change that and be more available to them and play NBA 2K11 and NBA 2K12 more with them. And the same with NBA 2K10, actually. Those 3 years, I wish I had spent more time with them. So I think that would have been another golden age for us. But because I wasn't around as much, it didn't end up being as much of a golden age. And I have a lot of regrets about that. So for me, I would say because of that, I might go back to around that time. But if we're talking about a time where all three of us were just loving the NBA, like smitten with the NBA, and playing basketball video games all the time and stuff like that, it's going to be around Live 2004, around that time. So similar to you, the amount we played NBA Live 2003 and NBA Live 2004 is insane. We also were huge NBA fans at the time with Jordan's return. There's all the great teams that were playing at the time, and the Kings and the Spurs and the Lakers and all the different teams that were playing that we just really enjoyed watching. We enjoyed watching the Celtics a lot at the time when we were watching a ton of NBA. We never missed a Celtics game at the time. So I think if I had to go back, it would be to probably 2003 or 2004, I think. Yeah. And then my second would be, because of the regrets, I'd say probably from 2K10 to 2K12.
I'd have to say that Remember at the same time would be my second choice as well, because I would have loved to have played them more when I was new. Personally, that was actually quite a good time in my life. I got on the self-improvement kick, and at the same time, of course, that was already, I feel, a life well lived at the time. So, perhaps I wouldn't change much about that. But then again, there's still things I've learned in the years since that, go back and apply that knowledge and that wisdom and the maturity to that time as well in my kind of my mid to late 20s. But that would be my second choice, because even though we'd lost Live at the time, we still had a bit of a modding community going for Live. Stuff was popping with the NLSC at the time as well in our community still, and obviously there's still good things going on at the moment, but that was kind of that, we had the rise of 2K modding and still that NBA Live modding going as well, so there was a lot of activity. Fun times with some really good friends, obviously would be fun to relive, but again, great memories already. But again, to spend some more time with 2K11 and 12, which I've gone back and enjoyed since, but to really be able to, again, much as I didn't do earlier, to be able to step out of my comfort zone, I guess, with the games and realize, yes, they do some things differently, but that's not bad, and get used to it and get used to some iso motion. And of course, then 2K13, I really loved that because they did bring in right stick dribbling, as I've said many times before. But no, I think that would be my second choice as well. So we seem to parallel each other on a lot of these things, funnily enough. So, yeah.
Well, I guess that's what happens, too, when you're born the same year.
Yeah, so or a month apart, basically. So
yeah, like a month apart, yeah. But yeah, it's crazy to look back on, because if I think about it sometimes, if I had gotten involved, because I was always playing games, that by now.
Yeah.
Like I've always collected, I've always played them. But if I was involved in the community earlier, and I was involved in the Live community, because we were playing it a ton, full seasons on Live 2004, talking about it all the time, joking about it all the time, creating video game legends. I sometimes wonder if I had been a part of the community back then, and maybe you and I had gotten to know each other back then. And maybe I went to a community event with you or something like that, or I, made networking back then. Like I networked with people. Like where would I possibly, how would that have changed how I approached basketball video games and who I knew and who I communicated with today and any opportunities that came up? I think about that sometimes.
I was offered a job to work for EA in 2008. I declined at the time because my mental health was not in a position to make the move over to then Canada, where it was being developed, and I had other responsibilities, and I just started a business and whatnot, and I made a lot of commitments at the time, and I just felt personally that I couldn't make such a big move by myself over to a new country. Years later, possibly I could, but at the same time, if I'd done that, then of course, a year later, Elite 11 happens, so maybe I'm back in Australia. Who knows? So it's it's one of those things. But yeah, I did actually have an offer, and I mulled it over. I was getting pretty close to accepting, but then there was just too much in the way at the time. But again, it is a what if. I don't know if I do that, because who knows whether the NLSC would still be around without me to my crazy dedication to it. Who knows? But yeah, that is I have put that out there in an article before. But yes, I did actually get a job offer, which I did turn down with some regrets. But at the same time, I had to make the choice that was right for me at the time, and that was the right choice. So yeah, that's that story.
I was about to ask you. Yeah, I was about to ask you if you had any regrets about it. But like you said, just life gets in the way sometimes, and it's not always a great opportunity. And I think one of the biggest things is moving your entire life to a completely different area. And I think that's probably the hardest part of any decision, is if you have to pick up your life and move your entire life around and move away from friends and family and all of that stuff.
Your whole support system,
your whole support system. I think that can be incredibly damaging to somebody's mental health if you had to do that. So, yeah, that is wild. And I think if I was in your shoes, I probably would have made the same decision depending on what's going on in my life. But it is one of those what ifs. Not to compare, but, what about Darko Milicic? What if he had stayed with the Celtics after the preseason? What if he would have brought another banner to us? Okay, so maybe that's not a good comparison.
But yeah, I don't look back with regrets. You do sort of wonder, but at the same time, I made the decision that was right for me at the end of the day. And obviously, life has fallen on hard times. Maybe I would have gone to 2K if there was a job offering, or maybe I would have just headed back to Australia and said, okay, that's my year or so in the gaming industry. I'm going back to just running the NLSC or whatever. But I think the way it is, I can look at a lot of things. Again, not to get too deep or philosophical about it beyond basketball gaming, but there's times in my life where I can see, what if I did this, what if I did that? But at the same time, if I'd done that, I wouldn't have met these great friends, or wouldn't have had these opportunities. So I feel like the way it turns out is the way it turns out, and you make the decisions that are right for you at the time, and you learn from them and make better decisions moving forward. And I think that it's a big part of maturing, and that is actually being able to make peace with your decisions and learn from them and move on and make the best of it and live a good life on and off the virtual hardwood.
Hey, you know what? In 2021, I can close with this. In 2021, NBA Live is not an active game, and the NLSC is going strong, and you and I can play NBA Live 10 in basically any game we want together. So I think things are going pretty well. How about that?
So yeah, that's kind of an interesting one to end on this week, and hopefully people enjoyed it. But I would be interested to hear what people feel is their golden age of gaming, and if it lines up with other important things in their life. Again, I look back at a Live 2002, and it came out the year that I started running the NLSC, so it's tied up in my memories of that and my memories of my second last year of high school. And then 2003 comes out at the end of 2002. The school year ends at the end of the calendar year in Australia, because of course our summer holidays are Christmas, so that is the end of the school year. So the year I finished high school was 2002. So Live 2002 and 2003 I have a lot of memories, and kind of melancholy, but also some melancholy and bittersweet in some ways, but also some fun memories as well of those final years of sort of entering early adulthood. So yeah, and it's all part of the nostalgia. I've touched on this in some of the Way Back Wednesdays as well, because it's everything. It's the NBA at the time, interactive almanacs, as I've said, and what's going on in your life, and positive and negative. it's all part of our memories for gaming, and sometimes gaming's an escape, and that's cool too.
We could have done a whole show on this.
We certainly could.
Should have thought of it. I asked you the question. Maybe we can touch on it more on another episode or whatever. But yeah, we would love to hear your answers.
Let us know what your golden age is, and any other memories. Hit us up in the forum at nba-live.com or on social media, which we'll be reading off shortly. But yes, hopefully you enjoyed the philosophical quarter of an hour here on the NLSC podcast.
Yeah, got a little bit deep, but you know what? There's definitely more to life than basketball gaming, but basketball gaming is a joy for both of us.
It's as deep as Mario Ellie's 3. How about we put it that way?
Yeah, and that's deep. That's
that was very deep, yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, that has brought us to the end of episode number 379 of the NLSC podcast. As always, we thank you for joining us as we talk about basketball video games each and every week, every Sunday on the NLSC, which is nb-live.com. We're also on all the major podcatching apps and platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, to name just a few. On those platforms, search for NLSC Podcast, look for our logo, and that will be us. And of course, when it comes to Apple Podcasts, please feel free to leave us a positive review. And since we're wrapping up, Derek, where can we find you on socials, and any other final words of wisdom or otherwise?
Well, I'm going to rope Andrew in, hopefully tomorrow, into recording Holding Court with D for 3, episode 17. So be on the lookout for that. You can find me on Twitter at D4384, where I'm the most active, and my new gaming channel on there at D43G. I'm posting things like the top 10 and obviously doing a lot of real NBA commentary as well, as Andrew knows. And whether people agree with me or not, I'm pretty honest on there. So, follow my takes on there. I'm on the NLSC D for 3. I'm over on YouTube D for 3, where I've been more active, and I just uploaded my own personal top 10 for this week, and I'll be doing one of those every single week. And I'm on Instagram as well, D for 384.
Of course, I am Andrew in the forum, and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Facebook and Twitter at the NLSC. On Instagram, we are NLSC Basketball. YouTube is NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.